In the vibrant VIP section of Ibiza's renowned Pacha nightclub, the music thumped as usual, but 23-year-old Eddie Burton remained motionless. There was no panic, no resistance, only stillness. Spanish police had arrived with an arrest warrant bearing a name that carried weight across Europe. Yet the man before them officially did not exist, at least not under the alias he was using, nor in the country where he now stood. He didn't appear threatening. With his youthful face and unassuming demeanor, he looked like any other tourist. But authorities knew better. This was not just any young man. This was the architect of a highly organized drug trafficking empire that had funneled massive quantities of heroin, cocaine, and ketamine into the United Kingdom. Before the headlines and international warrants, Eddie Burton was just a 10-year-old in Liverpool with oversized trainers and a school uniform half-buttoned. It began with simple errands: a walk, a plastic bag, a nod from an older boy. He didn't ask questions. That was the point. His soft features made him invisible to police. By age 13, Eddie had learned the patterns: when to disappear, when to speak, how to detect police before they noticed him. While others chased money and reputation, Eddie observed in silence. Relatives called him a tear away, smart, angry, always pushing boundaries. But what looked like chaos was something else: control. He didn't want to be in the streets, he wanted to run the streets from a distance. By 16, he had stopped delivering drugs. He was now giving orders. Liverpool gave him the education, but it was Amsterdam that would give him scale. At 19, Eddie disappeared from Liverpool. No dramatic exit, no missing person report, just a flight, a rented flat in Amsterdam, and a fake name on the lease. He wasn't running away, he was building. Amsterdam offered him what Liverpool couldn't: distance, anonymity, and opportunity. He didn't carry knives, he didn't flash cash. Instead, he built a quiet empire, studying ferry schedules, freight patterns, and clean courier routes. From behind the scenes, he moved the product like a CEO, one who never showed his face. While others posted online and drew heat, Burton became a ghost. Then came Spain, a second base, sun-soaked villas, and another layer of protection. Back in Liverpool, Sian Banks ran the UK end of the operation. To outsiders, she was living the influencer lifestyle, Instagram showing yachts, designer bags, and poolside holidays. But behind the filters, Banks was a critical piece of the puzzle. Between June 2022 and October 2023, she flew regularly to Amsterdam and Spain, sometimes monthly, always solo, always short trips. On 2 of those trips, customs didn't stop her, but her phone later told the truth. She returned carrying ketamine and cocaine, hidden in her luggage. She wasn't just Burton's girlfriend. She was his logistics chief, sourcing clean couriers, laundering cash, and organizing shipment routes. She was the firewall that allowed Eddie Burton to remain unseen. Her calm professionalism was her downfall. She believed no one would question a solo female traveler. But every trip, every message, every touch point left a trail. The first major crack in the operation came on July 3rd, 2022. A lorry entering Dover was flagged by Border Force. Inside, 90 kilos of ketamine, 50 kilos of cocaine, all professionally concealed under shopping bags and taped boxes. 6 weeks later, it happened again. A second truck, a different driver. This time, the drugs were hidden inside a modified fuel tank. 142 kilos of cocaine, 25 kilos of heroin combined. The seizures totaled 307 kilos with a street value of £20 million. Though the drivers had no useful information, forensic analysis didn't lie. Fingerprints found on the packaging materials linked directly to Eddie Burton and Sian Banks. Burton's were on cocaine wrapping. Banks's prints were found on the ketamine bags from the first seizure. They weren't caught in the act, but their touch left evidence. Investigators dove into their digital communications. Encrypted chats on Signal and WhatsApp, burner phones, No real names, yet patterns emerged. Messages between Burton and Banks revealed precise coordination. Emojis became code conversations, mirrored shipment timelines. Payment logs aligned with drops and returns. Their attempts at invisibility had failed. The phones remembered everything. Travel records matched too. Banks's trips aligned with shipment dates. Hotel check-ins confirmed she was present during packing days. Her holidays were actually high-level drug runs. When the world shut down during the COVID-19 pandemic, international borders tightened. Flights were grounded. Mandatory quarantines, negative tests, and vaccination records became the only passports to mobility. For most people, travel became a nightmare. But for Sian Banks, it was business as usual. In fact, she travelled more during the pandemic than before. That alone raised eyebrows among investigators. But what they uncovered next was even more alarming. Banks had been selling forged COVID documents. These included fake vaccination certificates, falsified PCR test results, doctor-signed travel exemptions. At first glance, it seemed like a side hustle, opportunistic fraud during a time when the world was vulnerable. But once authorities connected her movements to known trafficking routes, a new pattern emerged. These weren't random forgeries. They were strategic tools, allowing couriers to move across Europe during strict lockdowns. When drug shipments couldn't cross borders, the people behind them still could, thanks to Banks. These forged documents became just as important as burner phones and encryption apps. Without them, key players in the network would have been grounded. In the end, this wasn't about beating the system, it was about bending it to their advantage. By the time the second shipment was seized in late 2022, Eddie Burton had vanished once again. There were no last sightings, no intercepted messages, no new fingerprints. But he wasn't in hiding. He was simply relocating, changing countries, burner phones, and identities like layers of clothing. His digital presence was minimal. His name didn't appear on leases or bank accounts. To law enforcement, Eddie Burton had become a ghost. Still, the National Crime Agency, or NCA, worked in silence. Over months, they compiled a dossier of evidence: shipment patterns, phone records, surveillance photos, forensic results. This wasn't just about catching a drug dealer. This was about bringing down a European-level organizer, a man who never touched the drugs but had control over every shipment, every route, every player. By mid-2023, the evidence was undeniable. With support from Dutch and Spanish police, the NCA launched a full-scale international manhunt. The goal wasn't just arrest, it was extraction and prosecution. It all came to a head on a humid August night on the Spanish island of Ibiza. Inside the world-famous Pacha nightclub, music thumped beneath neon lights. The venue was packed: tourists, influencers, celebrities. But in the VIP section, one man stood out. Not because of what he did, but because of what he didn't. Eddie Burton wasn't dancing, he wasn't drunk, he was watching. Calm, quiet. A drink in one hand, a fake ID in his pocket. Spanish intelligence had been tipped off hours earlier. They had eyes on the club, and plainclothes officers moved in slowly. There were no scenes, no chaos. When they reached Burton, he didn't run, he didn't argue. In fact, he barely spoke. But the moment they took his fingerprints, the silence shattered. He was positively identified as Eddie Burton, wanted in the UK for running a £20 million drug empire. Just like that, the ghost had been caught. Burton was taken into Spanish custody, and extradition proceedings began immediately. But there was a complication. Though he was arrested in Spain, he had entered the country through Germany using fake travel documents. That meant Germany had to approve part of the extradition process. This slowed things down, but not for long. The UK's National Extradition Unit, working in coordination with Interpol and German authorities, finalised the paperwork in record time. By March 2024, Eddie Burton was placed on a flight back to the UK. No disguise, no escape plan, no more distance. After years of staying hidden, he was now exactly where he didn't want to be, inside a courtroom, facing the full weight of British law. When the case reached court, prosecutors laid out a meticulously detailed timeline of events. The charges included conspiracy to smuggle Class A and B drugs, participation in organised crime, forging official documents, money laundering. But it wasn't just the charges, it was the evidence that made the case airtight. 2 separate lorry seizures carrying over 307 kilos of drugs, fingerprints on both heroin and cocaine packaging. Burton and Banks both directly linked encrypted messages that outlined routes, payments, and drop points, synchronized travel records, hotel stays, and international trips. A series of burner phones recovered and decoded, showing direct communication about trafficking schedules. This wasn't a theory, it was a blueprint of a criminal enterprise, and Burton was the architect. The defense had little to say. The jury didn't need convincing. Eddie Burton thought he had built the perfect criminal system. One where others took the risks, he remained a shadow. The profits kept flowing and silence guaranteed safety. But in the real world, nothing stays hidden forever. The couriers were caught. The fingerprints told stories. The messages weren't as private as he believed. And the quiet, unassuming kid from Liverpool who once delivered weed in a school bag had become a most wanted man. When the music stopped in Ibiza, so did the empire. From the streets of Liverpool to the clubs of Spain, Eddie Burton's journey wasn't just about drugs. It was about control, ambition, and ultimately, hubris. Because in the end, no matter how smart you think you are, the law catches up. And this time, it did.